Hello students, welcome to my channel. Nationalism in India is one of the most important topics for class 10th social science board exam. Through the precise information, knowledge and the discussion of some important questions, you can easily understand the topic and score well in the exam. I will discuss this video in 4 parts. This is part 1 of the video. In this part, I am going to discuss about very important movement, that is Satyagraha movement, which is related to nationalism in India. So be with this video till the end. If you are new on my channel, then hit the subscribe button, click the bell icon so that you can get the notification of my new videos. First of all, you need to know about the meaning of nationalism. As the name suggests, nationalism is related to the nation, the feeling towards the nation. Nationalism means, in simple sentence, the affectionate feeling towards the country or nation, uniting the diversity and ready to do anything, even sacrifice the life towards the country for establishing the perfect identification of the nation or country. Now, about the origination of the modern nationalism, you know that France is the founder of modern nationalism because France only gave the idea of equality, liberty, and fraternity, about which you have already studied in chapter 1, The Rise of Nationalism in Europe. Through the concept of equality, liberty, and fraternity, the entire world got to know the idea about the unity. Then, through the unity, it could be possible to establish the feeling of nationalism, and also it could be possible to form the nation states. Because modern nationalism in Europe came to be associated with the formation of nation states. It also meant a change in people's understanding of who they were and what defined their identity and sense of belonging. New symbols and icons, new songs and ideas forced new links and redefined the boundaries of communities. In most countries, the making of this new national identity was a long process. Means the modern nationalism is not only associated with the war and the people, those who were involved in war, for the nationalism concept and for the formation of nation state, for giving the identification of the nation, but also the people, those who were not associated with the war, but they had some feeling of nationalism through some symbols, through icons, songs, dance. They wanted to show the feeling of nationalism, and through these things, they also awoke the people about the feeling of nationalism. As in Europe, the nationalism was associated with the formation of modern state. In India, it was associated with the anti-colonial movement or freedom struggle, as in Vietnam and many other countries. People started unifying their diversity to overcome the colonial rule. The sense of being oppressed under colonialism or British rule gave a path to share bond and tied many different groups together. But each class and group felt the effects of colonialism differently. Their experiences were varied and their notions of freedom were not always the same. The Congress under Mahatma Gandhi tried to force these groups together within one movement, but the unity did not emerge without conflict. Phases of Indian nationalism. This is also very important to know. First phase or early nationalist phase. Dadabhai Naroji, Gopal Krishna Gokhale, Firoz Shah Mehta, Pandit Madan Mohan Malviya. The leaders of the Congress were known as early nationalists. Second phase or assertive phase. Swadeshi and boycott movement and radical members of Congress such as Bal Gangadhar Tilak, Bipin Chandra Pal, and Lala Lajpat Rai are associated with this phase. Third phase or Gandhian phase, also known as mass phase of the national movement. This period is known as the Gandhian era. In this final phase of the nationalist movement, Mahatma Gandhi emerged as the biggest leader, and his principles of non-violence and satyagraha were mainly used to free India from British rule. First World War and Indian independence. This is also very important. How First World War affected Indian nationalism and how after First World War Indian nationalism turned into mass nationalism or Indian freedom struggle turned into mass struggle. The First World War took place between 1914 to 1918. Before First World War, Indian nationalism was concentrated with some groups, some tribal groups, some farmer groups, some political groups. They reacted against the British rule according to their needs, according to their aspiration, time to time. But these movements were not the unified movement, and every sections of society were not associated with this movement. After First World War, national movement became the mass movement. Now every sections of society wanted to get into the concept of Indian nationalism, and every Indians wanted to get part in the freedom struggle. So how it could be possible? What were the reason behind this? About all these things we will discuss in point. Writing the answer in point is the best way of writing. If you are learning the reasons in point, it is very easy to understand, easy to memorize, easy to write, and easy to instill the points in your mind. Creation of the new situation. This is very common for any war. After every war, new situation is created. So after First World War also, new economic and political situation was created. Huge expenditure. It led to a huge increase in defense expenditure, which was financed by war loans and increasing taxes. Custom duties were raised and income tax introduced. Price increase. This is also very common after getting the economical crisis. Price increase is very common. Through the war years, prices increased, doubling between 1913 and 1918, leading to extreme hardship for the common people. Forced recruitment of soldiers. Villages were called upon to supply soldiers, and the forced recruitment in rural areas caused widespread anger. Crops failure. Then in 1918 and 1919, then 1920, 1921, crops failed in many parts of India, resulting in acute shortage of food. Influenza epidemic. This was accompanied by an influenza epidemic. According to the census of 1921, 12 to 13 million people perished as a result of famines and the epidemic. Emergence of new leader and introduction of Satyagraha. This is also very important question. How Satyagraha was introduced in India. After the First World War, a new leader, Mahatma Gandhi, appeared and suggested a new mode of struggle, the idea of Satyagraha. He successfully applied this idea in South Africa and returned to India in January 1915. The idea of Satyagraha emphasized the power of truth and the need to search for truth. Satyagraha means the struggle for truth. It suggested that if the cause was true, if the struggle was against injustice, then physical force was not necessary to fight the oppression. Satyagrahis believed that any battle against the injustice can be won through non-violence. This could be done by appealing to the conscience of the oppressor. People, including the oppressors, had to be persuaded to see the truth instead of being forced to accept truth through the use of violence. By this struggle, truth was bound to ultimately triumph. Mahatma Gandhi believed that this drama of non-violence could unite all Indians. Means Mahatma Gandhi, after returning back from South Africa, applied the new mode of struggle, the idea of Satyagraha, because he used this mode in South Africa and he got the success through this mode of struggle, and he got the success in Satyagraha against the racial discrimination in South Africa. So he wanted to apply this mode of struggle in Indian freedom struggle. Satyagraha movements in India led by Mahatma Gandhi. Now question may come, explain Satyagraha movements in India led by Mahatma Gandhi. After arriving in India, Mahatma Gandhi successfully organized Satyagraha movements in various places. Some of the most important are Champaran Satyagraha. In 1916, he traveled to Champaran in Bihar to inspire the peasants to struggle against the oppressive plantation system, especially the indigo plantation. The Champaran Satyagraha of 1917 was the first Satyagraha movement led by Mahatma Gandhi in British India and is considered a historically important rebellion in the Indian independence movement. Kheda Satyagraha. In 1917, Mahatma Gandhi organized a satyagraha to support the peasants of the Kheda district of Gujarat. Affected by crop failure and a plague epidemic, the peasants of Kheda could not pay the revenue and were demanding that revenue collection be relaxed. Ahmedabad Satyagraha. In 1918, Mahatma Gandhi went to Ahmedabad to organize a Satyagraha movement amongst cotton mill workers. So, three Satyagraha movements were led by Mahatma Gandhi. First was Champaran Satyagraha. It was related to indigo plantation and indigo cultivators. Kheda Satyagraha, it was related to the Kheda district peasants who were demanding for relaxation of revenues. Ahmedabad Satyagraha was related to mill workers. They were demanding for high wages and less work. The Rowlatt Act. This is also very important incident. So what was Rowlatt Act? The Anarchical and Revolutionary Crimes Act of 1919, popularly known as the Rowlatt Act, had been hurriedly passed through the Imperial Legislative Council to oppress the revolutionary activities against the British rule. British rule or British government wanted to suppress the revolutionary activities. So they passed the Rowlatt Act. According to this Act, the government has enormous power to repress political activities and allowed detention of political prisoners without trial for 2 years. Nationwide Satyagraha against the proposed Rowlatt Act. As the proposed Rowlatt Act suppressed the political activities against the British rule and the nationalist activities against the British rule, Gandhiji in 1919 decided to launch a nationwide satyagraha against the proposed Rowlatt Act 1919. Mahatma Gandhi wanted non-violent civil disobedience against such unjust law because Mahatma Gandhi's principle was non-violent mode of struggle, which would start with a hartal on 6th April. Rallies were organized in various cities, workers went on a strike in railway workshops, and shops closed down. Measures on British administration to clamp down on nationalists. This is also very important question. What measures were taken by British administration or British government to clamp down on nationalists? Alarmed by the popular upsurge and scared that lines of communication such as the railways and telegraph would be disrupted, the British administration decided to clamp down on nationalists. Local leaders were picked up from Amritsar and Mahatma Gandhi was barred from entering Delhi. On 10th April, the police in Amritsar fired upon a peaceful procession provoking widespread attacks on banks, post offices, and railway stations. Martial law was imposed and General Dyer took command. Now, Jallianwala Bagh massacre. This is very important incident in Indian history as well as Indian freedom struggle. On 13 April, the infamous Jallianwala Bagh incident took place. On that day, a large crowd gathered in the enclosed ground of Jallianwala Bagh. Some came to protest against the government's new repressive measures. Others had come to attend the annual Baisakhi fair. Being from outside the city, many villagers were unaware of the martial law that had been imposed. General Dyer entered the area, blocked the exit points, and opened fire on the crowd, killing hundreds. His object, as he declared later, was to produce a moral effect to create in the minds of satyagrahis a feeling of terror and awe. Jallianwala Bagh incident was one of the most heinous crimes of the British government. So, Indians started protesting against this incident. As the news of Jallianwala Bagh spread, crowds took to the streets in many North Indian towns. There were strikes, clashes with the police, and attacks on government buildings. Now, British government's brutal repression to Jallianwala Bagh protests. This is also very important question. The government responded with brutal repression, seeking to humiliate and terrorize people. Satyagrahis were forced to rub their noses on the ground, crawl on the streets, and do salam to all sahibs. People were flogged and villages around Gujranwala in Punjab, now in Pakistan, were bombed. Seeing violence spread, Mahatma Gandhi called off the movement. And Khilafat issues and united mass action. Although the Rowlatt Satyagraha had been a widespread movement, it was still limited mostly to cities and towns. Mahatma Gandhi now felt the need to launch a more broad-based movement in India. For organizing the mass movement, unifying the two prominent religious communities, Hindu and Muslim, was inevitable. So he decided to take up the Khilafat issue to bring the Hindu and Muslim together and make the freedom struggle as the mass struggle. What was Khilafat issue? This issue was also related to First World War and one of the most important effects of First World War. The First World War had ended with the defeat of Ottoman Turkey, and there were rumors that a harsh peace treaty was going to be imposed on the Ottoman Emperor, the spiritual head of the Islamic world, the Khalifa. To defend the Khalifa's temporal powers, a Khilafat committee was formed in Mumbai in March 1919. A young generation of Muslim leaders like the brothers Muhammad Ali and Shaukat Ali began discussing with Mahatma Gandhi about the possibility of a united mass action on the issue. Gandhiji saw this as an opportunity to bring Muslims under the umbrella of a unified national movement. At the Calcutta session of the Congress in September 1920, he convinced other leaders of the need to start a non-cooperation movement in support of Khilafat as well as for Swaraj. In next part, we will discuss about non-cooperation movement and Swaraj movement, which is very important for the nationalism in India concept. Please like, share and subscribe.